You're not enough. Those three words, spoken loud enough for an entire restaurant to hear, would shatter one woman's heart and awaken something fierce in a single father who'd been teaching his 7-year-old son about dinosaurs just 3 tables away. What happened next in that cozy Seattle restaurant on a Friday evening in late October wasn't planned. It wasn't heroic. It was simply a choice, one that would change 3 lives forever and prove that sometimes the most broken moments create the most beautiful beginnings. Before we continue, please tell us, where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. The copper kettle smelled like garlic bread and caramelized onions. Collins Dawson sat across from his son Levi in their usual corner booth, watching the boy color a T-Rex with intense concentration, his tongue poking out the side of his mouth the way it always did when he focused. "Dad, do you think dinosaurs had favorite foods?" Levi asked, not looking up from his menu masterpiece. Collins smiled, grateful for the millionth time that he had this kid. "I bet they did, buddy, just like you and your mac and cheese obsession." "It's not an obsession, it's a refined palate." He said the words carefully, clearly repeating something he'd heard from his teacher.
Collins was about to respond when movement near the entrance caught his attention. A man in his late 20s, designer jacket, expensive watch, the kind of guy who checked his reflection on every surface, was seated at a nearby table. The man's expression was impatient, bored. He ordered a drink without looking at the waitress and kept glancing toward the door. Collins recognized that look. Obligation, not anticipation. 10 minutes passed. The man checked his phone 4 times. Collins had turned his attention back to Levi's elaborate plans for his volcano science project when the restaurant door opened again. A young woman with long blonde hair wheeled herself inside, maneuvering a sleek wheelchair with the kind of ease that spoke of years of practice. She was beautiful. Delicate features, nervous smile, dressed carefully for what was clearly an important evening. Collins watched her scan the restaurant, saw the moment her eyes found designer jacket guy. Her whole face lit up. "Trevor, I'm Tiffany. It's so nice to finally—" Collins saw it happen in slow motion. The man's polite, waiting expression didn't just fade, it collapsed. His smile dropped like someone had cut the strings holding it up, replaced with something ugly, disgust. His eyes traveled from her face to her wheelchair and back, his lip actually curling.
"You've got to be kidding me." The words carried across the restaurant. Several diners looked up. Levi stopped coloring. Collins felt his stomach drop. "I'm sorry?" Tiffany's voice was small, confused. Trevor, if that was even his real name, leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms like she was something offensive he needed to distance himself from. "Rachel didn't mention this," he gestured at her wheelchair, not even trying to lower his voice. "Look, I'm going to be straight with you because I don't believe in wasting time. This isn't going to work." "I don't understand." But Tiffany did understand. Collins could see it in the way her hands gripped her armrests, knuckles white. "I mean, come on. I'm an active guy. I run marathons. I go hiking every weekend. I need someone who's whole, someone who can actually keep up with me, someone normal." Collins watched Tiffany physically recoil, as if she'd been slapped.
"I'm not incomplete," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "You're not enough." Trevor stood abruptly, pulled out his wallet and threw 2 20s on the table. "I'm sorry, but I can't do this. I need a real partner, not a project. You understand, right? It's nothing personal." He walked out, just like that. Left her sitting there, alone, in front of everyone. The silence that followed was devastating. Collins saw other diners look away quickly, uncomfortable. Some whispered behind their menus. A few stared with pity that was almost as bad as Trevor's cruelty. Tiffany sat perfectly still, her face flushed deep red. her eyes glistening with tears she was clearly fighting not to shed. "Dad," Levi's voice was small, distressed. "Why did that man say those mean things? The lady didn't do anything wrong." Something ignited in Colin's chest. For 6 years, he'd worked at Harborview Rehabilitation Center, helping people rebuild their lives after accidents and injuries. He'd held the hands of patients who'd sobbed about being rejected, about being told they were less than, about being defined by what they could no longer do instead of who they were. He'd watched them fight their way back to living, to believing they deserved to take up space in the world. And this woman, this stranger, had just been told in front of a room full of people that she didn't deserve basic human decency. Not on his watch. Collins made a decision that would change everything.
Levi, how would you feel about making a new friend tonight? His son's face brightened immediately. Really? Can we help her, Dad? Yes, buddy, we can. Collins stood up, his heart pounding. As he walked toward Tiffany's table, he thought about all the patients he'd worked with. The veteran who'd lost his legs in Afghanistan and learned to run again on prosthetics. The teenager paralyzed in a car accident who'd gone on to compete in wheelchair basketball. The grandmother with a stroke who'd fought through a year of therapy to hold her grandchildren again. They were some of the strongest people he'd ever met. And this woman, sitting alone, fighting not to break down in public, was strong too. She just needed someone to see it. "Excuse me?" She didn't look up at first, staring down at her lap, shoulders shaking slightly. "Excuse me?" Collins said again, gently. "I'm Collins. That's my son Levi over there." He waited until she slowly lifted her eyes to his. They were blue, brimming with unshed tears, full of humiliation and hurt. "We couldn't help but see what just happened. And we want you to know that guy was completely wrong. You're not incomplete. You're not a project. And you deserve so much better than that." Tiffany stared at him like she couldn't quite process that this was happening.
"We were wondering," Collins continued, crouching down so they were at eye level, "if you'd like to join us for dinner. Levi's 7, and he talks non-stop about dinosaurs, so I apologize in advance. But we'd really enjoy the company." For a long moment, she just looked at him. Collins could see her trying to determine if this was pity, if this was real, if she could trust this unexpected kindness. You don't have to do that," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I know I don't have to." Collins held her gaze steadily. "I want to." That man was wrong about everything he said. You're complete exactly as you are, and you shouldn't have to sit here alone after what he put you through. He gestured toward their booth, where Levi was half standing, waving enthusiastically with both hands. "Besides," Collins added with a gentle smile, "Levi's already decided you're his friend, and he's very persistent about these things." A single tear escaped, rolling down Tiffany's cheek. But when she smiled, tentative and fragile but real, it transformed her whole face. "Okay," she said quietly. "Thank you. Thank you so much." As Collins walked beside her chair back to their booth, he was aware of the other diners watching. But this time, their expressions had changed. The elderly couple at the next table nodded approvingly. Their waitress, Dorothy, who'd been working there for years, gave Tiffany's shoulder a gentle squeeze as she passed. Collins wasn't doing this for their approval. He was doing it because it was right, because he wanted Levi to learn that kindness wasn't complicated. It was a choice you made every single day, especially when someone else chose cruelty. "Hi, I'm Levi." His son's announcement was immediate and enthusiastic. "I'm 7 3/4, which is almost 8. That man was really mean to you, and I'm sorry. My dad says some people don't know how to see what's really important." He paused for dramatic effect, then asked the most important question. "Do you like dinosaurs?" Tiffany let out a surprised laugh, genuine and unexpected. The sound seemed to release some of the tension locked in her shoulders.
She wiped at her eyes quickly. "I'm Tiffany. I'm 25, and thank you, Levi. That's very sweet of you to say. I consider your question seriously. I do like dinosaurs, actually. What's your favorite?" "Ankylosaurus." Levi launched into an immediate explanation. "Because it has armor and a club tail so it could protect itself from T-Rexes and other predators. What's yours?" Collins watched as Tiffany visibly relaxed, Levi's innocent enthusiasm creating a safe space where the humiliation of moments ago could begin to fade. "I think I'd have to say the pteranodon," she said thoughtfully, "because flying seems pretty amazing. Imagine being able to just soar away whenever you wanted." "Pteranodons aren't actually dinosaurs, they're pterosaurs, but they're still really cool. And you're right, flying would be awesome."
"Levi," Collins said with gentle warning, "let's give Tiffany a chance to catch her breath, okay?" "It's okay," Tiffany said softly, meeting Collins' eyes. "Really, this is nice. Thank you." The sincerity in her voice made Collins' chest tighten. Dorothy appeared at the table. "What can I get for you, sweetie?" she asked Tiffany with particular warmth, pointedly ignoring the empty table where Trevor had been. As they ordered, mac and cheese for Levi, grilled salmon for Tiffany, a burger for Collins, the conversation began to flow more naturally. Tiffany asked about Levi's school, and he launched into an enthusiastic explanation of his volcano science project. "And then the baking soda and vinegar make it explode!" He demonstrated with wild hand gestures. "Dad helped me build it out of clay, but I did all the painting myself." "That sounds incredible," Tiffany said. "I'd love to see pictures." Collins pulled out his phone, showing her the photos. As she scrolled through them, making genuine comments about Levi's artistic choices, Collins found himself studying her. There was resilience in her eyes, a determination that hadn't been broken by Trevor's cruelty. She'd been knocked down, devastatingly so, but she was choosing to get back up. "So, Collins," Tiffany said, handing back his phone, "what do you do?"
I'm a physical therapist at Harborview Rehabilitation Center. I work mostly with patients recovering from accidents and injuries, helping them regain mobility and independence. Something shifted in Tiffany's expression. Recognition, maybe. Understanding. That must be rewarding work. It is, Collins said honestly. Every day I see people pushing through pain and frustration to reclaim their lives. They're some of the strongest people I've ever met. The emphasis on strongest wasn't lost on Tiffany. She looked down at her hands, then back up at him. I had physical therapists after my accident. They saved my life in a lot of ways. Not just physically, but they helped me believe I could still have a life worth living. What happened? Levi asked with the blunt curiosity of childhood. Why do you have a wheelchair? Levi, Collins said, but Tiffany shook her head. It's okay. I don't mind. She turned to Levi, her expression open and honest. I was a swimmer in college, a really serious one. I was training to try out for the Olympics. One day during practice, I was diving and I hit my head on the bottom of the pool. It damaged my spine, and now my legs don't work the way they used to. Collins felt a surge of admiration. She was explaining this to a 7-year-old with grace and honesty. Does it hurt? Levi asked, his young face full of concern.
Sometimes, Tiffany admitted, but I've learned to live with it. I can do most of the things I could do before, just differently. I work as a graphic designer now, creating logos and websites for businesses. I paint. I still swim with my arms at the Adaptive Sports Center. Life looks different than I planned, but it's still mine. That's really cool, Levi said, seriously. You're like a superhero who adapted to new powers. Tiffany blinked. Then she smiled, a real, genuine smile that transformed her entire face. You know what? I like that way of thinking about it. Thank you, Levi. As their food arrived and they ate, the conversation continued. Tiffany told them about growing up with 3 older brothers who taught it to be tough and competitive. They never let me win at anything just because I was the youngest or the only girl. I had to earn every victory.
After my accident, they were amazing. They built ramps at our parents' house before I even got home from the hospital, but they also didn't let me wallow. They expected me to keep fighting. Do they live nearby? Collins asked. Two are in Portland, one's in San Francisco. We video chat every Sunday, though. They're very protective. She laughed. If they knew about tonight, they'd probably hunt Trevor down. I'd help. The words came out before he could stop them, and they earned him another smile.
When Levi started yawning into his mac and cheese around 8:30, Collins knew it was time to wrap up. But as he signaled for the check, he found himself not wanting the evening to end. There was something about Tiffany, her strength, her vulnerability, her dry humor, the way she'd engaged with Levi so naturally, that drew him in. If you've ever met someone and felt an instant connection, you know how rare that is, how precious. Collins had felt it only once before, with his ex-wife, and that had ended with a note on the kitchen counter and a 2-year-old who asked for his mommy for 6 months straight. But this felt different, real in a way that first connection hadn't been. "Tiffany," he said, trying to sound casual and completely failing, "I know tonight didn't go the way you planned, but would you maybe want to do this again? Properly, I mean. Not as a rescue mission, but as—" he hesitated, then went for honesty. "As a date. A real one. With me." Tiffany studied him for a long moment. Collins could see the war happening behind her eyes. She was questioning his motives, wondering if this was pity. "Why?" she asked, finally, her voice soft but direct. "Is this because you feel sorry for me?"
No. Collins leaned forward, holding her gaze. "It's because in the last 2 hours, I've watched you handle one of the most humiliating situations I can imagine with grace and dignity, because you made my son laugh and took his dinosaur obsession seriously, because you're clearly intelligent, funny, and interesting, and because when you smile, really smile, it's like the whole room gets brighter." He paused, then said the words that mattered most. "Trevor was wrong about everything. You're not incomplete. If anything, I think you might be one of the most complete people I've ever met." Tiffany's eyes filled with tears again, but these were different. Not tears of humiliation, but something else. Hope, maybe. "I'd like that," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'd really like that, Collins." They exchanged numbers. As Collins lifted a drowsy Levi into his arms, his son mumbled against his shoulder. "I really like her, Dad. She's nice, and she knows that pterosaurs aren't dinosaurs." "I like her too, buddy," he whispered back. As they walked to their car, Collins glanced back through the restaurant window. Tiffany was still at the table, looking at her phone, probably their newly exchanged numbers, with a small, genuine smile on her face. He'd made the right choice tonight. He was certain of that.
3 days later, Collins found himself on the phone with Tiffany on a Monday evening after Levi was in bed. He'd texted her the next morning, unable to wait longer than 12 hours, and they'd been talking ever since. "So, honest question," Tiffany said, her voice carrying a hint of vulnerability. "Why are you single? You're a great dad, you have a good job, you're kind, which apparently is rarer than it should be. What's the story?" Collins had known this question would come eventually. He took a breath. "Levi's mom left when he was 2. We'd been married for 3 years, and I thought we were happy, but she wasn't. She wanted to pursue modeling in Europe. She felt like being a wife and mother was holding her back. One day, I came home from work and found a note on the kitchen counter. She was already on a plane." "Oh, Collins, that's awful." "It was," he admitted. "For a long time, I was angry, not just for me, but for Levi. How do you walk away from your child? But eventually, I realized that anger was just hurting me. She made her choice, and Levi and I made ours. We built a good life, just the two of us." "He's an amazing kid. You've done an incredible job." "Thanks, though I can't take all the credit. He came out pretty amazing on his own."
Collins paused, then asked the question that had been on his mind. "What about you? Have you dated much since your accident?" Tiffany laughed, but it was tinged with bitterness. "Friday night was actually my first blind date in over a year. I tried a few times before, but it always went the same way. Guys who seemed interested online would suddenly have emergencies when they saw the wheelchair, or they'd go through with the date but treat me like a charity case.
Trevor was just the most honest about his disgust. That says everything about them and nothing about you, Collins said firmly. Maybe, but it's hard not to internalize it after a while, you know? You start to wonder if maybe they're right. If maybe you're asking too much to want someone to love you as you are. You're not asking too much. Collins' voice was steady, certain. You're asking for the bare minimum, to be seen and valued as a complete person. Anyone who can't do that doesn't deserve you. There was a long pause. You barely know me, Collins. How can you be so sure? Because I spend every day working with people who've been through what you've been through. I've seen the strength it takes to rebuild your life after everything changes in an instant. I've held the hands of patients who have sobbed about being rejected by people who claim to love them. And I've watched those same patients go on to live full, rich, meaningful lives. He meant every word. You're not defined by your wheelchair, Tiffany. You're defined by who you are. And from what I've seen, that's someone pretty remarkable. He could hear her soft breathing on the other end of the line. When she spoke again, her voice was thick with emotion. Thank you. You have no idea how much I needed to hear that. Their second date at the Seattle Art Museum set the tone for everything that followed. Levi had insisted on coming. He'd decided Tiffany was his friend, and he was very persistent about these things. The three of them spent the afternoon wandering through galleries. Levi provided running commentary on every sculpture, inventing elaborate backstories that made both adults laugh. When they reached a massive abstract piece made of twisted metal, Levi declared it a dinosaur doing yoga. Tiffany had laughed so hard she'd nearly fallen out of her chair. Collins had caught her, his hand steadying her shoulders. Their eyes met for a moment longer than necessary. Their third date was dinner at a quiet Italian restaurant after Levi's bedtime. Collins's neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, had happily agreed to watch the boy for the evening. Without Levi as their buffer, the conversation went deeper. They talked about loneliness, about fear, about the constant work of rebuilding yourself when life breaks you down. The worst part isn't the physical limitations, Tiffany admitted. It's the way people see you, or don't see you. I became invisible in some ways. Men look through me now, not at me. I'm either a tragedy or inspiration porn, never just a woman. I see you, Collins said, reaching across the table to take her hand. Just you. A beautiful, intelligent, funny woman who I can't stop thinking about. That night, he kissed her for the first time in the parking lot. Her chair between them made the angle awkward until they both laughed and he knelt down to her level, cupping her face gently. Is this okay? He asked. More than okay, she whispered. Over the following months, they built something real and solid. Tiffany became a constant presence in their lives. She came to Levi's soccer games, adapted soccer, which she'd actually helped Collins find. She helped with homework, particularly art projects where her graphic design skills made her invaluable. She taught Collins how to cook actual meals. How did you survive this long anyway? She'd teased one evening, rescuing a burning pan. Takeout. Lots and lots of takeout. Collins learned about her world too. He went with her to the Adapted Sports Center, watching her swim with powerful arm strokes, her face transformed with joy in the water. He learned to navigate the city with wheelchair accessibility in mind, noticing for the first time how many barriers existed.
That restaurant has 3 steps at the entrance, Tiffany would point out. I'll need to use the back entrance through the alley. That's ridiculous, Collins had said. Why wouldn't they have a ramp? Welcome to my world. The next week, Collins wrote letters to 10 local businesses about accessibility. He couldn't change everything, but he could do something. There were hard moments. Nights when Tiffany's phantom pains were so severe she couldn't sleep, and Collins held her while she cried. Days when thoughtless strangers made comments or stared too long. Moments when Levi asked innocent questions about why Tiffany couldn't do certain things. But there were more good moments. Sunday mornings when Tiffany would come over and make pancakes while Levi set the table. Movie nights where they'd pile onto the couch debating whether dinosaurs or sharks were cooler. Quiet evenings after Levi was asleep when Collins and Tiffany would talk about their days, their dreams, their fears. "I love you," Collins told her for the first time on a random Tuesday evening in March, 4 months after that first dinner. They were washing dishes together, Levi already in bed, and it just slipped out. "I love you, Tiffany. I think I have since that first night when you sat down at our table and let Levi lecture you about pterosaurs instead of letting that awful man ruin your evening." Tiffany had frozen, her hands still in the sudsy water. Then she slowly turned to face him, her eyes shining.
"I love you too," she whispered. "Both of you. You made me believe again that I could be loved, really loved, exactly as I am. Not despite my wheelchair, not because of some fetish or savior complex, but just as me." "Always as you," Collins confirmed, kissing her softly. "Every single part of you." The next morning over breakfast, Levi looked up from his cereal and asked, "Is Tiffany going to be my mom?" Collins nearly choked on his coffee. "Buddy, that's a big question." "I hope so," Levi said simply. "I like her, and she likes us. Doesn't that make us a family?" Collins and Tiffany glanced at each other. It was a sunny afternoon in late April, almost a year after that fateful dinner at the Copper Kettle. Collins had been carrying the ring in his pocket for 3 weeks, waiting for the perfect moment. Levi had been absolutely terrible at keeping the secret. "Is today the day?" Levi would whisper dramatically every morning. "Are you going to ask her today?" "Patience, buddy." Finally, Collins decided. They drove to Discovery Park, one of Tiffany's favorite places in Seattle, with its winding, accessible trails and stunning views of Puget Sound. It was the kind of perfect spring day that Seattle rarely delivered. Warm sunshine, clear skies, the Sound sparkling like scattered diamonds.
They found their favorite spot, a clearing overlooking the water. Levi immediately ran off to investigate a tidal pool, giving Collins and Tiffany a moment of peace. "This is nice," Tiffany said, her face tilted up toward the sun. "I love it here." "Tiffany," Collins started. His heart was pounding so hard he was sure she could hear it. He knelt down beside her chair, taking her hand. "A year ago, I watched a man tell you that you weren't enough, that you were incomplete. And I've spent every day since then trying to show you how wrong he was." Tiffany's breath caught. Her eyes widened as she realized what was happening. "You're not incomplete. You're extraordinary. You're strong and funny and talented and kind. You've made Levi's life richer just by being in it. You've made my life richer. You've shown us both what real love looks like. Patient, accepting, genuine. Every single day I wake up grateful that I was in that restaurant that night. Grateful that I got to meet you." "Collins," Tiffany whispered, tears already streaming down her face. "I don't want to spend another day without you being officially part of our family." He pulled the small box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a simple, elegant ring with a single diamond. "Tiffany Williams, will you marry me?" "Yes," Tiffany cried, not even hesitating. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." Collins slipped the ring onto her finger. Then she was pulling him up, her arms around his neck, kissing him while they both laughed and cried at the same time.
"Did she say yes?" Levi's voice called from the tidal pool. "Can I come back now?" "She said yes," Collins shouted back. Levi came running, whooping with joy, and threw himself at both of them with such enthusiasm that he nearly knocked Tiffany's chair backward. Collins caught them both. The three of them stayed like that for a long moment, a tangle of arms and laughter and tears and joy. "We're a family now," Levi declared. "A real family! "We always were, buddy," Tiffany said, kissing the top of his head. "We always were." They were married that summer in an intimate ceremony by the water at Golden Gardens Park. Tiffany wore a simple white dress, her long blonde hair adorned with a crown of wildflowers. Collins couldn't take his eyes off her as she wheeled down the aisle, her three brothers walking proudly beside her chair. Levi was the ring-bearer, taking his job with utmost seriousness, though he did stop halfway down the aisle to show a guest his dinosaur action figure. Collins's colleagues from the rehabilitation center attended, including several former patients who'd become close friends. Mrs. Patterson sat in the front row, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. When the officiant asked if anyone objected, Levi piped up with, "I object to waiting any longer. Can they kiss already?" The entire gathering erupted in laughter.
"I love you," Collins whispered as they were pronounced husband and wife. "My complete, perfect, extraordinary wife." "I love you too," Tiffany whispered back. "Thank you for seeing me, really seeing me." "Always," he promised. Later, during their first dance as a married couple, Collins held Tiffany's hands as she maneuvered her chair in slow circles. "I never thought I'd have this," Tiffany admitted quietly. "After my accident, I thought this kind of love was closed off to me. That night at the restaurant when Trevor said those things, I almost didn't go out with you because I thought you were just being nice, just pitying me." "And now?" Collins asked. "Now I know better. You loved me from the start. Not my wheelchair, not my story, but me, the woman I am. And you gave me back something I thought I'd lost forever, the belief that I deserved to be loved completely. You do," Collins said firmly. "You deserve everything good in this world." As the evening drew to a close, Collins stood to give a toast. "A year ago, I was in a restaurant with my son when we witnessed an act of cruelty. A man told the woman who is now my wife that she wasn't enough, that she was incomplete, that she wasn't worth his time." He paused, letting his gaze settle on Tiffany.
He was wrong about everything. Tiffany has shown me and Levi what it means to be truly whole, not because of what you can or can't do physically, but because of who you are in your heart. She's made us better people just by being part of our lives. He raised his glass. "To my wife, who is complete, who is enough, who is everything. Thank you for choosing us. Thank you for making us whole." "To Tiffany," the room chorused. 2 years after that Friday night at the Copper Kettle, the Dawson family had settled into a beautiful rhythm. They'd moved into a new house, one Collins and Tiffany had chosen together, with accessibility features built in from the start. Wide doorways, a roll-in shower, lowered countertops in Tiffany's home office where she ran her thriving graphic design business. Levi, now 9, had started a club at school called Ability Awareness, where he educated his classmates about disabilities and accessibility. Because everyone deserves to be included, he'd explained to his teacher. Collins still worked at the rehabilitation center. Tiffany sometimes came with him to talk to newly injured patients about life after disability. "I won't lie to you," she'd tell them. "Some days are hard. Some people will be cruel or thoughtless. You'll grieve the life you planned. But you'll also discover strength you didn't know you had. You'll learn who really matters in your life. And if you're lucky, if you're as lucky as I was, you'll find people who see you, really see you, and love every part of who you are."
On a Saturday morning in late spring, Collins woke to find Levi and Tiffany already in the kitchen. She was in her chair at the stove, teaching Levi how to flip pancakes while he stood on his step stool beside her. "No, like this," Tiffany was saying, demonstrating the wrist flick. "See? It's all in the technique." Levi tried. The pancake landed half on the pan, half on the counter. They both dissolved into giggles. Collins leaned against the doorframe, watching his family, and felt a wave of gratitude so profound it nearly brought tears to his eyes. This chaotic, loving, imperfect, beautiful life was everything. "Dad!" Levi spotted him. "Come help! Tiffany's teaching me to make dinosaur-shaped pancakes." Those look more like blobs, Collins teased, walking over to kiss his wife good morning. They're abstract dinosaurs, Tiffany defended, grinning up at him. Very modern, very artistic. As they ate breakfast together, slightly burnt, very abstract dinosaur pancakes, Collins thought back to that Friday night at the Copper Kettle. One moment. One choice. It had changed everything. They were a family. They were complete. They were home. If this story touched your heart the way it touched mine, please don't let it end here. Let it remind you kindness still matters, compassion still changes lives, and hope is never wasted. Subscribe and be part of our Soul Lift Stories family, where every story lifts the spirit and reminds us that light always finds its way back. And if this moment moved you, share it.